What's happening, everybody? Bob Wankel here, crossingbroad.com. We have the Eagles and Seahawks from Lincoln Financial Field to close out Wild Card Weekend. It is the final game of Wild Card Weekend. It also may be the best game of Wild Card Weekend. And if you want to bet on it, make sure that you go to crossingbroad.com/DK. Download DraftKings Sportsbook. Be sure to take advantage of our exclusive offer, Eagles plus 300 on the money line. Again, that's crossingbroad.com/DK to download DraftKings. Also, be sure to check out FoxBet at crossingbroad.com/FB. They'll give you $20 just for signing up and match your first deposit up to $100. So the Eagles come into this game against the Seahawks once again as a postseason underdog. 6 playoff games under Doug Peterson. They've been underdogs all 6 times. They're 5-0 against the spread so far, 4-1 straight up. Can they get it done once again? Well, home underdogs of 3 points or less are 7-3 since the start of the 2016 postseason. That's not ATS, that's straight up. So a good spot here for the Eagles. 538.com's ELO projection actually suggests that the Eagles should be a 5.5-point favorite and give the Eagles a 69% win probability in this game. I've been looking at the ELO projections all season long and how they compare with the actual betting market, and this is by far the largest discrepancy that I have seen on an Eagles game this year, and really one of the highest discrepancies that I've seen on any game this season. Part of the reason that I think we have this discrepancy is because of the point differential. The Eagles are actually plus 31 in terms of overall point differential this season, where the Seahawks are only plus 7. Something else to know, the Eagles are actually outgaining opponents by about 28 yards per game this season, whereas Seattle's actually been outgained by about 7.5 yards per game. So when you look at some of those higher level metrics, there's a reason that ELO likes the Eagles. One thing that might kind of be a check in the Seahawks column here is that Russell Wilson has a ton of playoff experience, whereas Carson Wentz does not. Playoff teams with quarterbacks making their first playoff start were only 1-3 last season. They're 9-15 since 2010 and 15-32 since the 2002 season. All right, so let's take a look at the current betting odds. These odds are available courtesy of DraftKings Sportsbook. Eagles right now are a 2-point home underdog, plus 110 on the money line, total set at 45. Some things that you may be interested in knowing if you're planning to bet the spread in this football game. Teams that enter the playoffs on a 4-game winning streak, as the Eagles are riding a 4-game winning streak of their own heading into the wild card round, teams are only 6-9 against the spread. So that regular season momentum to finish does not necessarily translate to covers early on in the postseason. They're also only 2-7 ATS at home, but are 3-2 ATS overall as an underdog when coming in on a 4-game winning streak. Now, the Eagles are 4-1 and 5-0 ATS under Peterson in the postseason, whereas the Seahawks are 8-7 ATS under Pete Carroll. So yes, the Eagles have been here before in the underdog spot, and yes, they've excelled in it. Now, to a more relevant and I think a much more pertinent point for this specific football game. Check this out. Underdogs of 2.5 points or less are 17-4-2 ATS in the first 2 rounds of the postseason, including 12-2-2 ATS in the wild card round. Small underdogs have excelled in the postseason at covering the spread and in most cases also winning the game outright. Seattle coming in on a 2-game losing streak. Yes, it's true that Russell Wilson has lost his last 2 games coming into the postseason. Wilson and the Seahawks are 7-0 actually when they have lost 2 straight games. So, they do not have prolonged losing streaks under Russell Wilson. But do know that road teams that lose their final regular season game are only 6-13-1 ATS on wild card weekend, including 0-3 ATS as a favorite. So that Week 17 stumble against San Francisco does loom large for Seattle coming into this game. One of the things we were talking about earlier on was point differential. Essentially, the Pythagorean theorem, win probability, and projections suggest that Seattle's essentially a shade above 500. Such teams have not performed well in the playoffs, so teams with a Pythagorean win theorem between 50 and 53% are only 3-10 ATS in the postseason. If you shrink that down to 51 to 53%, they're only 1-9. Seattle right at 51%. That is not a good sign for the Seattle Seahawks in this football game. Now, as for the total, all signs point to the under here. Outdoor game early in the postseason, historically speaking, this is what we tend to see happen. Lower scoring games, some things to consider. The under is 14-9 in non-Super Bowl postseason games when the total closes between 44 and 45.5 points. 7-2 in the wild card round. The under is also 40-24 in the wild card round since 2003, and it's 34-13 in non-dome games. Indoor games, higher scoring, not always the case in the regular season, but in the postseason, we see those indoor games tend to rack up some points. Outdoor games, however, like this one will be, a lot of times it hits the under. Finally, the under has been an insanely profitable play with Doug Peterson at Lincoln Financial Field. It is 24-10 in both regular season and postseason games under Peterson. He has been the most profitable home unders coach in all of the NFL since he has taken over. All right, before we get to our game picks and our selection on the over-under, some other bets that we like, some things that we think are worth considering, maybe some long shot plays here, at least the first two. Greg Ward to score a touchdown in this game at plus 240 odds. You can get that at DraftKings Sportsbook. When it comes down to it, we don't know about the availability of Miles Sanders or Zach Ertz for that matter. I think that Seattle's going to make a concerted effort to try to take away Dallas Goedert. That leaves Greg Ward as the Eagles' most consistent playmaker. He's getting a ton of snaps. He's getting a ton of targets in recent weeks, and it's been a big part of this surge late in the season. Eagles are a top 5 team at finishing red zone possessions with touchdowns. I think that Doug Peterson schemes something up for Greg Ward, and he finishes a drive with a score this week in this football game. Again, plus 240. I like the Eagles to win the game. Spoiler alert, I do think it's going to be a close contest, however, so I'm going to take the Eagles to win by 1 to 6 points at plus 340 again with DraftKings Sportsbook. And then a player prop that I like in this game, Russell Wilson complete at least 23 passes minus 105. You can catch that at FanDuel Sportsbook, crossingbroad.com/FB. Russell Wilson has only completed more than 23 passes one time in his last 6 contests, but I do not believe that Seattle is going to be able to run the football whatsoever in this football game with their running backs. I'm sure Wilson will make some plays with his legs, but I think that they're going to have to go high volume, be a little bit more conservative in the passing game, and I do believe he's going to rack up enough completions to get over the 23 mark. In terms of our pick on this game, I like the Eagles. I think that Seattle blew their opportunity at home last week. A physical game in which they lost linebacker Michael Kendricks. Yes, I know about the Eagles' injury issues. They've been well documented throughout the course of the season, but I believe that the Eagles are the better football team. The defense performs well at home. I just like the way that things are moving for them right now, and I'm going to take the Eagles in an upset, and I think it's actually my top player of the week, to be perfectly frank with you. In addition, I like the under just because, historically speaking, we see that these outdoor wildcard games tend to stay under the total. Trend data suggests that the game will stay under, and really when you look at the Eagles specifically, 24-10 the under is at Lincoln Financial Field with Doug Peterson. I cannot bring myself to take a play on the over here. The Eagles, I think, are going to make a concerted effort to high percentage passes, run the football, slow things down, and then try to win it late. If you want to bet on this game, we strongly suggest that you head over to crossingbroad.com/DK, get DraftKings Sportsbook, take advantage of our exclusive plus 300 Eagles moneyline odds offer. Again, you can also head over to FoxBet, crossingbroad.com/FB. $20 just for signing up, and they will match your first deposit up to $100.